Good morning. Hope everybody's had a great Thanksgiving. I thought I would mix it up for this video and actually talk a little bit about strength and conditioning. It's something that I don't see necessarily covered a lot in SCA or HEMA, and something I only see covered somewhat in like the Bohurt kind of things. And I thought it might be an interesting video, particularly because due to a shoulder injury, I'm not able to lift heavy right now, which I do tend to like to do, but I haven't been able to do that for a little while, and so I've been experimenting with other types of workouts and programs that allow me to push myself and make progress, but aren't going to rip my shoulder out of the socket. And a tool that I had used before, but have really focused on a lot over the last couple of months, is sandbag training. And I've really come around to think that if you have to pick one type of training, especially for combat sports, the sandbag might very well be the way to go. So for those that might not know, you can certainly just buy a duffel bag and fill it with sand, but there are purpose-built sandbags that you can find pretty inexpensively, and they have these reinforced handles all over them. And that makes it really nice because the different grips, you can grab neutral, which means the palms facing each other, which is really great for me because it puts the least amount of strain on my shoulder. You can grab over, you can grab under, you can grab the sides. And so this gives you the ability to have lots of different grips all over the sandbag, which means you can have more and more exercise variation, which is really, really good. The other benefit of the sandbag is that, as you can see, it shifts around, which means you do not have, like with a barbell, a nice stable thing that you're moving. You are moving something that is constantly shifting and flopping around, and you're having to work even harder to stabilize it. Which, if you're thinking about kind of proprioception in combat sports, having to stabilize yourself and whatever that other thing is you're grabbing and moving through space, that is a little bit more applicable to combat sports than moving a nice barbell. Although I love barbell and dumbbell training, and I do it all the time, I think that uneven and shifting weights moving through space is really, really good for what we do. So I just thought I would talk about some of the benefits of the sandbag, talk about the kind of exercise routine protocol I've been following, and show you some of the exercises and how I do them, and just ramble on a little bit about sandbag training because I think it's really fun, and I think that it's very applicable for combat sports. And if you are still doing home training, and that is the focus of this series, this backyard basics training, sandbags take almost no space. They're not particularly expensive, and you can just absolutely torture yourself if you want to, which is great. So right now I'm doing sandbag training 4 days a week, and I'm alternating between kind of an upper body focused, although there's some overlap in a lower body focus. And just like with my barbell training, I'm really focused on movement patterns as opposed to just lifts. So there's really a focus on a horizontal pushing and pulling motion, and then of course the vertical pushing and pulling motion. And then for lower body, there's kind of the quad dominant, that's your squat kind of motion. And then there's the hip hinge, where you're sticking your butt back and then coming forward, and that's more your like deadlift and things like that. And then there are what we call kind of secondary or accessory lifts, and then a conditioning piece. Although the way I'm choosing to do the sandbag is I'm getting a conditioning part going all the way through, which is part of why I sometimes feel like my lungs are full of acid and my heart is going to blow out of my chest. So with lower body focus, which is what I just got done doing this morning, it's really all about having a main squat variation and a main deadlift variation. So the two main squat variations are putting this thing on your back and you squat, right? You squat down and you stand up, right? That's one of the two main squat variations. The other one is what we call a front squat, where you're going to take this thing, you're going to put it in what we call the front rack position, and now you're squatting, having to stabilize this thing in the front. And that one's great because it really forces you to focus on good form, and it makes you stabilize this thing in front of you, which gets some core work in as well. So the front squat is what I was doing this morning. In terms of the deadlift variation, there's kind of your standard deadlift, and you'll probably notice I'm pretty much always using the neutral grip because, like I said, it's easiest on my shoulder. So we have the deadlift that includes a little bit more bend, and then we have what's called the stiff or straight leg deadlift, but your knees are not locked, they're still a soft bend. You just are really focusing on sticking the butt back and having less bend in the legs, and that really focuses on the hamstrings more. So this morning, I did 4 sets of 20 reps of the squat and the stiff leg deadlift. And what I'm doing is I'm just supersetting all the way through with no breaks. So I'm doing 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, squat and deadlift. At the end of that, which only takes me a couple of minutes, you know, I'm a little short of breath. I kind of take a moment to get reset up, and then I'm doing some of those, like I said, secondary or accessory lifts. My favorite one by far is the lunge, and there are a few lunge variations. And lunges are great because they put you in that kind of staggered stance, because in combat sports, not too often do we stand parallel. We tend to have, for whatever we're doing, more of an offset stance. So with lunges, there are a few variations. You can step out and come back. You can step back and come back up. Or you can do walking lunges, where you just, every step is lunge. And all of them have good, you know, good benefits to them. So I tend to use different ones. And then because I have a box, I was also doing box step ups with the sandbag. And then in this accessory section is usually a core movement. So for me today was V-ups, and that's just where you lay on your back and then you bring your feet and your hands up, and you're literally trying to make your, you know, hands and feet clap together at the top. They suck. And then we get to the conditioning piece, and the conditioning piece is really my favorite part of the sandbag. So my favorite movements for conditioning with the sandbag are things like thrusters, things like cleans, things like ground to shoulders, and ground to overhead. So a thruster is just when you have your sandbag in that front rack position and you squat and you pop it up over your head. All right. I think you can imagine that doing 10 reps of those, your heart starts going pretty fast. Cleans are just taking this up to that rack position, or you can do a hang clean where you hold on to it, go to mid shin, pop it up. Ground to shoulders are just like the sound. You turn it sideways and then you're popping it up onto your shoulder, and then you pop it up onto the other shoulder. And then of course my favorite is the ground to overhead. I'm sure you guys can see that. And that is where it's on the ground. You grab it and you explosively pop it overhead, right? Just like it sounds. Ground to overhead. So with those, usually you pick 2 or 3 movements. You do 10 reps of each and you cycle through them. And there's a few ways to do it. As many reps as you can in 7 or 8 minutes, every minute on the minute, or just 10 rounds, regardless of how long it takes. So if you do 4 rounds of the main movement, 4 rounds of the secondary movements, and then whatever the conditioning protocol is, really only takes about a half an hour, but I am toast. My lungs are burning, whatever muscle groups I'm using tend to be burning, and I got a really good workout that forces me to stabilize a shifting and unwieldy piece of gear. And so it helps me work on my proprioception and my endurance, both muscular and cardiovascularly. I like it a lot. My wife is doing these with me as well. She's using a 30-pound sandbag versus my 60, but other than that, it's exactly the same. It has all the same handles, and she's doing all the exact same movements for the same rep and time schemes. So she is still, you know, getting a great workout. She's just not running the risk of getting injured, because with sandbag workouts, the nice thing is you can scale the weight. You can put more sand in there, take sand out. You can have a couple different sandbags because they're not very expensive, and you can, like I said, really push yourself super hard, and you're not moving 200, 300, 400, 500 pounds, which means there's a little bit less risk of injury as long as you're kind of intentional about what you're doing. So for the upper body focus days, which I'll be doing tomorrow, like I said, there's a horizontal push and pull and a vertical push and pull. So tomorrow will be ground presses. So that's where you lay on your back with the sandbag on your chest and you push it away. And then you have bent over rows, which is just like it sounds like. Stick out your butt, stop bending your legs, and you're rowing it. You can also do, which will be Wednesday, you can also do overhead presses. And then you can do pull-ups, or you could do more rows. So tomorrow, like I said, will be ground presses. You could do push-ups as well. And rows, 4 sets of 20, cycling through no breaks, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20. Then there will be curls. All right, so just, I'm using hammer curls because it's easier on the shoulder. And hammer curls are, again, just that neutral grip as opposed to the palm up. And then I'll be doing closed grip push-ups, and then tricep extensions, and that's just where you dip it behind your head. And I'm doing those. That kind of runs into the one limitation for sandbags, kind of the main one. It's not very easy to change the weight. So if you're able to do 60 pounds on rows, but then you want to do tricep extensions and 60 pounds is too heavy, you either have to have a separate sandbag, or you have to pull some sandbags out or find an alternative exercise. So that can be one of the limiters with sandbag training, is that having just the one means you need to scale your workout differently sometimes. So after the main lifts, the accessory lifts will be conditioning. And unfortunately, because it's not my favorite, the conditioning tomorrow is going to include lots of burpees. So one very common protocol is 10 burpees on the sandbag, and that's just when you pop down and do your little jump. And then the power cleans. And it doesn't look like much, but if you do 10 sets of 10 reps, again without stopping, which is what the conditioning for tomorrow is, I consider throwing up. But again, that's really nice because my endurance is getting pushed really hard, my strength is kind of staying where it is, and my kind of strength endurance is going up, and it allows me to work on moving something unwieldy through space, which is going to help in my fencing and grappling and punching, kicking, so that all works out. So like I said, I just thought I would talk about strength and conditioning, particularly the sandbag, because although I have barbells and love them, have a sled and love it, if I had to pick one, I probably would go with the sandbag. And again, for people who are doing backyard training, sandbag is very cheap. There are programs online and there are routines online that are free or very nearly free. And I think it's a good option, has a lot of benefit for combat sport training. Hopefully this was interesting and helpful. And if you have any questions, send me a message. Have a good day.